Hi, I'm Kadarev, and in this video I want to show you my setup for the Mayen Island gate skip in Tomb Raider Underworld. The gate skip is considered to be one of, if not the most difficult trick in the current any percent ride for this game, and while I would disagree with it being the most difficult one, it is definitely very easy to see why it is up there. Most notably because it punishes you severely for failing it. You lose roughly 1 minute for each failed attempt. And the lack of nearby checkpoints makes practicing the trick really annoying. Currently on screen you can see what the skip looks like in Duppy's 24 minutes and 13 seconds run, during which he probably used the same strat you used for this skip if you went at it for some point. We used the treasure right here to go out of bounds by picking it up while facing away from the wall, and this pushes us back through the wall's collision. So once we're out of bounds, we run towards the gate that we're about to skip and start with the setup before we reach the gate. I want to stress at this point that it is not possible to simply continue running around the gate because the invisible floor we're on ends a good distance in front of the gate, so we would simply drop down into the void if we were to continue running. And it is also not possible to jump straight behind the gate because the collision of the gate extends quite far sideways, unlike what it may look like. So if we tried to jump straight past it, we would bonk against its invisible part and drop down into the void anyways. So what we need to do is some kind of two-part jump, where we change directions in midair to jump around the wall and pop back inbounds once we're behind it. To execute this skip in general, you want to get in a semi-precise spot around here in this area, which you can try to find by lining up with certain parts of the shadows on the floor. And next we want to throw a grenade at this wall, as it will knock us back inbounds if it explodes while we're near it. Once the grenade has been thrown, you want to face to about 45 degrees to the right of the gate, exit the aiming mode and start a delayed swan dive in place at the correct time. Then turn your camera so you face the area that is just behind the gate and do another swan dive out of your swan dive you just did. And if everything works out, you should get hit by the grenade and clip back in bounds, having successfully skipped the gate. But what you did not see there is if you do screw up any part, including and past the initial swan dive, you have to reload your most recent checkpoint, which, if you did make a safety save, is at the top of the hall and otherwise at the start of the level. So here you can see why I said earlier that this skip really punishes you for failing. So my way to do the skip will start out exactly the same, but it eliminates the most inconsistent part in my opinion, which is the turning of the camera to aim your second jump. And the reason this is really finicky in my opinion is because you have very little time to align the camera well enough, and the texture of the wall you're standing behind obstructs your view. I want to stress that my setup and process for the skip does not make it easy as such, and failure during the execution will still send you back all the way to the top of the hall. So this is not a guaranteed skip now. There will be an input display so you can see exactly which button I press and when I do that. So I hope that helps. We start the exact same way as always, making our way around the main hall towards the gate while out of bounds. Since we won't be able to adjust our camera mid-swan dive, the location from where we start the jump is a bit more precise. And to find it I use some visual cues. Now I'm aware that these might not be very well visible in this video, so I provided some screenshots detailing the patterns I follow in the description of this video. First, make sure you raise the camera as far as possible so your point of view is always the same and consistent. I line myself so that the front edge of Lara's torso is following the bottom edge of the visible floor, and their corners match up on the left side. Next, I align my mouse cursor so that its bottom quarter hovers just above this bulge here in the shadow. This basically fixates my heading, so to say. So from now on you should not turn Lara until you've reached a point from where you do the rest of the skip. All that's left now to find that spot is to look for a certain dark line in the middle of the shadow, which I want to use in a way where the bottom part of my reticle is aligned with it and the upper left corner of my reticle is in the extension of the bulge we used before. I hope this graphic kind of illustrates that. And once my reticle is on this spot, Lara has reached the correct location. Now enter manual aiming mode and aim for basically any spot that is on this side of the pillar behind the wall. It really doesn't matter if you aim high or low as long as it sticks to this part of the wall. Personally, I choose to throw pretty high because when I swipe my camera to the right, I naturally do a slight downwards motion, so I always come down with my camera anyways. Be aware that once you throw your grenade, you will be on a pretty strict timer, as you will have to count the beeps of the grenade to time the rest of your actions. Once the grenade has been thrown, and while still in aiming mode, turn right and place your reticle roughly between the first and second mountain from the left on this part of the skybox. It's not too precise, but basically the only place where there is some variance left in this trick, so make sure to practice this. It takes a bit of timing. And as I said, you're on a timer here anyway, so you want to make sure you get to this location rather quickly. Once you're happy with your angle, exit the manual aiming mode and then perform a delayed swan dive after the 6th beep of the grenade. Note that since you can't see Lara too well due to the wall, make sure that you know the timing for the delayed swan dive, and especially don't press roll too early, as this would end up with you dropping down into the void because you would do a normal swan dive instead of a delayed one. Once Lara's in the middle of her delayed swan dive, start holding up and left while mashing jump, and then press roll again after Lara has jumped out of her delayed swan dive to perform another swan dive in midair. This is the last input you have to do for this trick, so after this you should jump towards the grenade and it should blast you back inbounds just right if you timed it correctly. And that's pretty much it. The setup is slightly longer than the old way, but it definitely can be trimmed down with some practice, which I still haven't gotten around to do so. In exchange, we don't have to worry about the camera adjustments mid-jumping, and we have more time to prepare our jumps, which makes this skip a lot more consistent, at least for me it does. Here you see the two ways side to side, showing the slower setup on my side and also the lack of turning the camera during the swan dive. Note that since we're holding up left during the swan dive, we will always go at a consistent 45 degrees angle with our second swan dive, and that is why we need to be in a pretty precise spot in the first place and face in a pretty precise direction. But it's also why we don't need to adjust our camera mid-swan dive. And as a final remark, please note that the beeps are not equally spaced, because a beep will always occur immediately once a grenade attaches itself to a surface, so get used to the interval between the second and third beep being shorter than the ones between the other beeps. So yeah, that's just about it. I really hope this helps you as much as it helped me. And if you have any questions regarding this skip or any other trick in the Underworld run, or any other run in the trilogy for that matter, feel free to ask me either here on YouTube or actually better yet on Discord, in the Tomb Runner Discord. Link to which I will also have in the description, or you can find us on speedrun.com in the forums. And yeah, just enjoy. I hope this helps. See you around. Bye bye.